Hello, BookTube. It's Wednesday, and that means new comic book day, and today was howlingly windy, but I looked online ahead of time and seen that there might be some things that I would want at the comic shop, and it had been a while since I was there. I wanted to say hi to the employee that I know there who's nice, who's actually personable. He understands customer service. He understands that if the customer isn't crazy and is friendly, that you should be friendly in return. You shouldn't stare sullenly or watch the clock to see when your break starts or anything like that. He's the only person at my local comic shop, my LCS, that understands that basic thing. And today, it's not his intent. He's just a nice guy. It's not his intention to make anything out of it. But nevertheless, today is a perfect demonstration of one of the reasons why, if you are, for instance, a manager in retail, you should insist on that from your employees, and you should fire them if they don't do it. If they're not friendly, you should fire them. And if they say, look, I have to be here, I don't have to be friendly, fire them. Just say, all right, glad we cleared that up. You're done. Go. And I'll find somebody who will be friendly, because today is a perfect example of that. I went into this comic shop already armed with what I wanted to get. I'd looked on the list online, and because I was talking to this kid about comics, he was able to, the phrase in retail is upsell. He was able to upsell me. He doubled my checkout amount. And he didn't do it in any kind of crass or manipulative way. It's just that because he has been friendly and outgoing to me, we have had conversations. He knows what might interest me. It's the same kind of skill that I and my colleagues employed in old-style bookstores forever and ever. You get to know the customer, and when you get a shipment of new releases, of new things to the store, you look at it and immediately your mental Rolodex goes off and you think, I should set that aside. And the next time customer X, Y, or Z comes in, I should tell them, we only got one copy of this, and not the used car salesman, it's going fast, you better snap it up now, but rather, it's a low-interest item. The store probably won't order another one. You wouldn't see it if it's just one copy. We don't expect you to comb every item in the place. So I thought I'd set it aside and show it to you in case it is of interest to you before I let it loose into the wild of the store. That is just good customer service. And this kid did that and doubled my checkout by pointing out to me a couple of things that I missed and that I was indeed interested in. And I got, as a result, 6 comics, 6 floppies. And half, the first 3 comics that I got were reprints. Marvel and DC Comics, the 2 big superhero publishers, are both doing cheap dollar comic reprints where they're basically vehicles for in-house ads. They will take an old issue of theirs that connects vaguely to some sort of modern continuity, some big event that they're pushing, and they will reprint it for $1. And every other page in DC it's Dollar Comics, in Marvel it's True Believers. Every other page in those issues is a big full-color in-house ad for something that either Marvel or DC is doing. It's just a way to deliver those ads to comic book readers. Both Marvel and DC are doing that, but Marvel and DC are also doing something else. They're doing facsimile editions of older issues where it's not that, where you don't get any in-house ads. Instead, you get the ads, the early issue is reprinted entirely, including the ads, including the letters page. And those facsimile editions are amazing. And this kid at my LCS says that for some odd reason, Newbury Comics, which is the chain that I go to, his Newbury Comics doesn't order many of these facsimile editions. I don't know why, since most of the people who would buy them are the active comic book readers of today. Young people don't read comics. Nevertheless, one of the ones that they got this time around is connected. It's a facsimile edition that is connected to a launch that they had this week. And we're going to see both of them here because it involves one of my favorite DC superheroes. And easily my favorite comic book superhero who has no superpowers. And that is Adam Strange. This is Mystery in Space. And there's Adam Strange with his classic, the X-strap is holding on his jetpack, and he has his ray gun, and that is one of his arch villains, Kanjar Ro. And this is an adventure from the early 1960s, drawn by Carmine Infantino. It's inked, I think, by Murray Anderson. I don't think there'll be any credits in here though, so you'll have to take my word for it. Because Carmine Infantino has a very loosey-goosey style, but it's a very good style, but it's a very weird style. And in this thing, it's far more cross-hatched and detailed. And so I'm thinking it's probably Murray Anderson or somebody like him, a strong inker, that did this. But you see that it has. Let me show you an example here. This issue includes these. It includes the letters column from the early 1960s. It includes Mysteries of Space, these informational bits on the planets, and it includes. Look at this thing on the back. Model toy soldiers. Did any of you ever get that? The whole set for $2. But Adam Strange was an Earth archaeologist who was caught in an energy beam that transports him millions of miles away into another planet, the planet Ran. And on the planet Ran, he falls in love with a woman named Alana, and he gets to know a scientist, a bald, stereotypical exposition-dumping scientist. And he also gets to live a life of swashbuckling adventure that he didn't get to do on Earth. Dons a jetpack, dons an outlandish costume, carries a ray gun, and faces the innumerable threats that crop up on the planet Ran. Innumerable. And he uses his wits. He doesn't use his ray gun, really. He uses his wits to figure out how to solve those problems. And he only has a limited amount of time, because when the energy from that energy beam wears off in his body, he is transported back to Earth. So it's a classic premise, because he falls in love with Alana, but he can't stay with her. He falls in love with the planet Ran, and he becomes the planet's champion, but he can't stay there. He's plucked away regularly back to Earth, back to his normal life on Earth. And I love these adventures, these old Adam Strange adventures. I just love them, absolutely love them. And this is a facsimile edition, $4, that was at the store today, and that worker pointed it out to me. And there were then, over on the Marvel side of comics, there were 2 True Believer issues. Marvel currently has a massive storyline called Empire. For some weird reason, it's misspelled, which is a kind of a reprise of one of the most popular Marvel storylines ever done, which is the Kree-Skrull War. The Kree and the Skrull are 2 alien species in the Marvel Universe that have been warring forever. And in a comic in the 1970s, in a multi-issue saga of the type that was very rare at the time, the writers gave us the Kree-Skrull War, and the war was between those 2 races, but it overlapped. It took in Earth just a bit. Earth was not at the beginning of the Kree-Skrull War storyline. Earth was not at the center of events at all. It was just collateral damage. But the Kree had manipulated the DNA of groups of humans, and the Earth had also become home to an exiled Kree warrior named Mar-Vell, who became the Marvel superhero Captain Marvel, so that Marvel could gain the copyright to that name and take it away from Fawcett, so that the big red cheese would have to call himself Shazam, and couldn't call himself Captain Marvel in his own book or on the cover of his own book ever again. Creating an enormous amount of confusion in the comic book world. But Mar-Vell was an exile on Earth and was a man of the Kree. So, and also the Skrull had been introduced first as green-skinned, shape-shifting aliens in the Fantastic Four. So there were connections. And the Kree-Skrull War was this big cosmic storyline involving those 2 races. And this new event that Marvel has going on, I wouldn't dream of trying to follow it myself, because it'll be in 50 different issues. And a lot of the monthly installments will contradict each other, and it'll be a mess. Narratively speaking, it'll be a mess. So I wouldn't dream of doing it, but that storyline, Empire, is reprising the Kree-Skrull War and adding dimensions to it. And to support that, Marvel's True Believer issues, their $1 True Believer issues this week, were all about the Kree-Skrull War. And to do that, you have to go back to the 70s. You have to go back to the early 70s, when that whole storyline was blossoming in the Avengers and in Captain Marvel's own book. And that's what I got today. I got this one. This is The Only Good Alien is a Dead Alien. This is written by Roy Thomas, who really helped to cook up the whole idea of the Kree-Skrull War. And it's drawn by Sal Buscema. And it starts with our hero, Captain Marvel. For some odd reason, he has a trench coat on. He quickly dispenses with it. And he has been accosted by 3 members of the Avengers. The Scarlet Witch, her brother Quicksilver, and the Vision. Scarlet Witch has unpredictable probability altering hex powers. Her brother Quicksilver is super fast. And the Vision is a solar-powered android who can make himself intangible or diamond hard for super strength, and who has a solar-powered jewel on his forehead that can emit beams of energy. So they're stalwarts of the Avengers at this time, and they fight Captain Marvel, and he quickly dispenses with them, and that is absolutely ridiculous. That is absolutely ridiculous. They wouldn't fight him individually, first of all. They'd fight him at the same time. And I don't get a panel like this at all. He swats Quicksilver away out of thin air. He wouldn't even be able to see Quicksilver move. And Mar-Vell is stronger than a normal human, but Quicksilver could punch him 100 times in the span of a heartbeat. There's no reason why these 3 Avengers would need any help. Quicksilver should be able to handle this himself. And the Scarlet Witch, and the Vision, who is one of the most powerful Avengers. And instead, that's the setup in this first page. That earned this issue when it came out in 1971. That earned this issue a rather peppy letter from small town Iowa saying, what's the use of having Avengers if you're going to treat them this way? Anyway, they take Mar-Vell to a hospital where they drain off excess energy, excess radiation in his body, something that is touching and poignant. The number of times in Captain Marvel adventures where radiation is the problem becomes touching and poignant, because long after this storyline, a writer and artist at Marvel Comics was given permission by the powers that be at Marvel Comics to kill Captain Marvel. And not by some spiky space alien named Doomsday. Instead, he has him die of cancer, caused by radiation. The Death of Captain Marvel is one of the first graphic novels. It is still one of the best graphic novels. It's an amazingly moving thing by Jim Starlin. And I'm surprised. I guess I'd be a little bit surprised to see it reprinted for $1 or anything like that. But this has nothing to do with that. This issue and the other one that I got today are designed to give you the background of the Kree-Skrull antagonism, the background of that whole storyline. So this is quite a bit of fun, this issue. One of the things that I noted about it back in 1971 was that Mar-Vell may be an alien in Earth's lighter gravity, but he is not Superman. In this classic sequence, he needs to work to pull open the metal elevator doors in the Baxter Building. He can't just effortlessly do it. He has to strain to do it. But in the course of this issue, he talks a little bit about his own tangled history with the Kree Empire. And that segues well into the next Avengers issue that they reprinted for the True Believers line. Another issue that was $1. This is, I think, from 1975. And this is classic Gil Kane cover. Look at that. I tell you. And there is Mantis. This is called True Believers Empire Mantis, whereas this one was called Empire Mar-Vell. I have no idea how. There's never going to be a second issue to any of these things. But in this one, at least with the Mar-Vell storyline, there's the break-in at the Baxter Building. There's the fight with the Avengers before the exposition starts. This issue is a little bit surprising to me because it's all exposition. Don't let the dramatic cover fool you. Nothing like this happens in the issue. Instead, our characters split in half. These 4 go on a celestial quest, sort of a guided tour of the history of the Kree and Skrull antagonism. The Vision splits off from them and learns his own history. But all it is space opera. It's the Avengers are not participating. They're just learning what the primitive Kree did with their cities, what the primitive Kree did with the primitive Skrull, etc., etc. It's a talky issue. I remember thinking that even at the time. I restrained from firing off a letter, but nevertheless, I just figured this is the kind of thing you have to do. You have to give exposition if you're going to make this big storyline. Why Marvel would reprint this? I guess it does show the early animosity between the Kree and Skrulls, so that, I guess, makes sense that readers might want to know that. I always wonder about these things. Because there are still young readers that read comics. I don't think there are many. I think most comics readers are closer to my age than yours. But I wonder when they pick these things up, a young reader of comics who is maybe following Empire the new big event, I don't think that a young reader is going to be able to resist a dollar full color comic but it'll be from an era they know nothing about. And I'm wondering what they make of it. I'm wondering what they make of the different storytelling, the different art standards. The art standards are so much better. I don't know. I'd be curious to know. I should ask the young coworker at my local comic shop what he makes of it, because he, I'm sure, has no idea. He wasn't born in the 1970s. His parents probably weren't born in the 1970s. So he has probably not read all this stuff the way I have many, many, many times. So those were the first 3 books that I got today. They were reprint issues. And the Mystery in Space reprint of this classic Adam Strange adventure was to lay the groundwork, because DC Comics is launching Adam Strange in his own new series with a star writer, Tom King. I have had a long and problematic relationship with this Tom King guy, mostly through his Batman run, his run on the Batman comic, which is just unbelievably silly and talky and maudlin. And I read some of those issues, and some of them early on in that run I kind of sort of liked, and then the run degenerated into just characters talking to each other for the whole issue, where you turn a page in a 4-color superhero comic book, and the whole page would be dialogue. And Tom King was given permission to resurrect Adam Strange, the character, and put him in a thing called Strange Adventures, and that was the first issue was out today. And it's a weird take on the character. It's a weird take. It's the first installment in what is clearly a well thought out multi-part storyline, so I'm not judging it too harshly. There were a couple of things that intensely bothered me about this issue, but they're not deal killers at all. The issue finds Adam Strange and his wife Alana not on Rann but on Earth, and he is a media celebrity. He is the superhero that he always dreamed of being. Once upon a time in the 1970s, DC had a comic book called DC Presents, in which Superman teams up with a different hero every month, and there was one great issue in that run, drawn by Jose Luis Garcia Lopez, in which Superman teams up with Adam Strange, and they swap places. Superman finds himself on Rann. Adam Strange finds himself on Earth, and of course he leaps into action when there's trouble in Metropolis. And there's a wonderful moment in that issue. I remember it vividly, like I just read it. There's a wonderful moment in that issue where Adam Strange saves the day. He disables an amorphous blob monster, and is worshipped. He is thanked and cheered by the people of Metropolis. Lois Lane is frustrated because she's already had enough trouble dealing with one super guy in Metropolis. Now she has another super guy to deal with. And there's a moment when the crowds are gathering around and asking for Adam Strange's autograph where he is pleasantly chagrined. This is what it's like, he thinks, to be a hero on my own homeworld, which has never happened to him before. He's a hero elsewhere. But in this issue, the idea is that we find Adam Strange and Alana on Earth, and they're not anymore subject to the random whims of the Zeta Beam. They're resident on Earth, and Adam Strange is a hero on Earth. He is all over the media, and that's okay. I can definitely sit and watch that to see. As the issue was progressing on, it started to bother me that Alana talks like an Earthling. She cusses like an Earthling, she uses idiom and slang like an Earthling, and at one point in the issue, utterly inexplicably, she smokes like an Earthling. They do that on Rann. But the issue has a plot. Adam Strange has written a book, and the refrain of this issue all throughout is that we go back to book signings where he is sitting at the table and he's saying, "Hi, I'm Adam Strange, can I sign your book?" And at one of those signings, he is accosted by an angry man who says that he's responsible for a horrible crime back on Rann. And then later on, that man is found dead, executed apparently by an extraterrestrial ray gun, like the kind Adam Strange uses. So Adam Strange knows that he's innocent. He goes to Batman at one point. Actually, it's a very good sequence. He goes to Batman and says, "Investigate me. Come at me as hard as you can. I'm innocent. You're the best detective in the world. Prove it. Prove that I'm innocent." That the Alana smoking was naturally a part of this that bothered me. There was one other part though. There's a little shorthand in current year comic. One of the complaints, for instance, that the vocal subset of comic book fans called Comicsgate have about modern superhero comics in Marvel and DC is that the creators don't like comics. They consider them to be a vehicle for selling toys. One of them sarcastically put it. They have their eyes elsewhere on other forms of entertainment. They think this is kind of silly. They didn't grow up with it. They don't respect it. And there's something about that criticism that rings a little true with me. I've seen that kind of disdain, especially in Marvel, but also in DC, crop up in the oddest places. And it bugs me when I see it, because I don't want to buy a comic from someone who is condescending to me, even if they're hiding it. I don't want, if I find that out, that rules you out completely, no matter how much I'm enjoying your comic. And one of the little telltales that perhaps Tom King is not taking any of this seriously are these sound effects. Pew, pew. Pew, pew, P-E-W, P-E-W has become a kind of a hipster shorthand for the silliness of comic books. If you're firing energy beams or if there are energy guns going off or anything, they'll say pew, 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 because that is a shorthand for how these hipster doofuses think that comics are kind of dumb. And they're not. They're the ones who are kind of dumb. If they're going to call comic readers kind of dumb, I'd like them to say it to my face, and then we can compare how many languages we know. But seeing that bugged me. But not enough to put me off Strange Adventures. I will definitely get the second issue and see where it goes from there. I also got another first issue today. And this is a strange thing. I got this issue and I've read it twice now and I still don't understand what it is. This is masterminded by Alex Ross, who was the artist on a couple of great graphic novels, including one called Marvels for Marvel Comics. It was a 4-issue series done with acetate layover covers, chronicling 4 key events in 4 key periods in Marvel history, Marvel superhero history, and underscoring the fact, we've seen it on this channel, underscoring the fact that that history happened in real time, and that if you had been a young man in World War II, you would have been able to see it all unfold, from Captain America and the Submariner and the Human Torch fighting the Nazis, all the way to the Fantastic Four fighting Galactus. You would have been able to see it all in one lifetime. Marvels was fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. I always think of it as a Kurt Busiek thing, not an Alex Ross thing. Alex Ross is a great artist. He appears to have writing control over this series that has started with Marvel, just called Marvel. The cover is an Alex Ross painting of the iconic first issue of Marvel Comics eons ago, back in the 1940s or 30s or late 30s or whatever. And that is the Human Torch on the cover, the original Human Torch. Not the young member of the Fantastic Four, but an android who can burst into flame and fly through the air, and who for a long time was he as an android crops up very prominently in the origin story of the Vision, which mercifully we are not going to get in this issue. It's a long story, but one way or another, this is not Alex Ross. He did the cover, but he doesn't appear to do much else that's in here. Instead, it seems to be some sort of an anthology book, which I don't really understand. There's a framing device by a supernatural enemy of Doctor Strange, Nightmare, the Lord of Nightmares, the Lord of Dreams. And then there are 2 internal stories, one of which is drawn in this weird, fuzzy, cartoony way. It's about Spider-Man fighting some of his villains. And that, I guess, is Mary Jane. I guess maybe I could become interested. I could become accustomed to this artwork style, but it's not my style at all. And then the next segment is drawn by Steve Rude and written by Kurt Busiek, the author of Marvels. And it's incredible. Just amazing, the artwork here. Steve Rude, of course, is the artist on Nexus. I've shown you on this channel before, not a Marvel nor a DC character, a murderer of mass murderers. And this was just a story about the early Avengers and the Hulk, and it was interesting. It was worth the price of the issue. The Spider-Man thing was not. If it had gone on much longer, I would have lost patience with it. What I don't understand is, what is this? There's no narrative that connects those 2 stories. There's no narrative that runs through this except the framing device with Nightmare, which could be anything. Is this a story? Is this a mini-series? Or is it just an anthology, a new anthology series that's just going to be ongoing? I have no idea. I liked one of the 2 stories well enough, certainly, to continue to get the second issue. But I'm really curious to see what the second issue is. I don't even know what this is. I should bone up on it. online, I guess. But the third thing that I got, the third new issue that I got, is something that we have seen before. This is an ongoing story that I'm just loving. I'm absolutely loving it. I want to make sure I get the credit right. But in a lot of current day comics, you have to search for the credits. They don't appear on the first page anymore. Sometimes they appear on the second page, like this is a movie. We're going to have to go all the way to the end of this. Yeah, this is part 3 of Race Against the Clock. This is written by Robert Venditti and drawn by Aaron Lopresti. And it is, I got the classic pin-up cover instead of the topical cover. But this is the continuation of the Justice League story that we've seen the previous 2 installments of it, where the Eradicator, a human-shaped machine from Superman's homeworld of Krypton, genetically engineers a group of super beings and leads them to conquer Earth and destroy everyone on it in order to make Earth a new home for a new Krypton. The Eradicator's original programming was to prefer all things Kryptonian and to continue the Kryptonian culture. And its idea of doing that is to assemble essentially a super army and lead it against Earth. Naturally, the first line of defense for such a thing is the Justice League. And in the first couple of issues, we see how badly the Justice League is equipped for that. You have the John Stewart Green Lantern. Green Lantern is incredibly powerful, of course, but every one of the people in the Eradicator's army is as powerful as Superman. You have Superman. He has experience with these powers, whereas the Eradicator soldiers don't, but there again, plenty of them. And there's only one of him. You have the Flash, who is super fast, but isn't super strong or invulnerable. And all of the Eradicator's foot soldiers are also now super fast. You have Wonder Woman, who's a match for any one of them, maybe any 2 of them, maybe any 3 of them. She's a master at unarmed and armed combat, but she's not a match for a whole army of them. And of course, Batman has no superpowers at all. And as a result, in the first 2 issues, the Justice League gets its behind kicked in quick order. And this issue takes off where that left off, with the Justice League desperately trying to come up with a plan to defeat this army. Just this handful of members. It's not the 1970s. We're not calling in a gigantic bally crowd of Justice Leaguers. There's no Hawkman. There's no Martian Manhunter. There's no Atom flying into the ears of these people and affecting their sense of balance. There's no Zatanna. There is a sorceress in here, Madame Xanadu, but she appears to me to be far less powerful than Zatanna. There's no Supergirl. There's no Captain Marvel or Mary Marvel or Captain Marvel Jr. No other sorcerers. No Justice Society. No, nothing like that. It's just this tiny handful of Justice League members. And the plan they have here is that the Flash will use his connection to the Speed Force to run so fast that he can actually warp time and go back far enough to thwart the Eradicator's plan before it even starts. And the Eradicator seems to think this is a big enough threat. We have this great reveal panel. He seems to think this is a big enough threat in order to prioritize it, but it turns out that there was a plan within a plan there, and the result is sets up what looks to be a very satisfying fight in the next issue. But in this issue, in order for the plan to start, the Eradicator and his troops have to be lured into a sense of false confidence. And they do that by being lured to the Hall of Justice, the Justice League's headquarters, where it appears to the Eradicator and his soldiers that they are not facing the whole Justice League, that they are facing just 3 Justice League members. He says, "Your initial attempt at interference is pointless, Kal-El." That's Superman. And Superman says, "We'll see." And look at that panel. So on the one hand, you have the Eradicator and an entire army of superpowered beings. But on the other hand, you have the 3 greatest superheroes of all time. Superman, Batman, and Wonder Woman. If you want to place your odds, I just love that moment. I absolutely loved it. I also love the restraint of the artist that he doesn't make that a splash panel. It's the big 3, the greatest trinity of superheroes anywhere, standing in front of the ruined wall, the Hall of Justice, telling another world beater, "We'll see if you succeed." I just loved it. That was my favorite moment in the issue, and it was a very interesting issue on its own. The plans within plans, and we'll see what happens in the next issue. I don't have any idea how long this series is going to go. That's the sort of thing I don't research. I don't want to know. If I'm enjoying a floppy issue, it used to be that my trip to the comic shop every week had 6, 8, even 10 of these in Marvel and DC. I would come home and there would be 6 or 8 or 10 books like this, where I wouldn't be holding it up and saying, I don't really know what this is. And I wouldn't be holding it up and saying, why is an extraterrestrial woman smoking on a patio on Earth? And is Adam Strange guilty of murder and he doesn't know it or anything like that? Instead, I would just be enjoying it. All my characters are in character. They all have great moments. I would just be enjoying a monthly issue. Used to be, once upon a time, that was my comic book experience right down the line. Whether it be the Justice League or the Avengers or Conan, I would be getting those every week and I'd be loving them. That doesn't happen anymore, so I'm grateful for stuff like this. Although, I have to confess, I have already peeked at the online listings for next week's comics, and as far as I can tell, there's nothing at all that will bring me to the comic shop next week. We'll see. There could be late editions, and there might be graphic novels of some kind or other that I might go for. But that was my comics today. Was 6 issues, 3 old, 3 new, and a quite enjoyable hour of reading they gave me. So I'm going to wrap this up for now, but I'll be back. Thank you, BookTube.